The fork hit the plate with a metallic clang. My father's hand froze midair, his knuckles white against the silverware, his face drained of color as though the life had been sucked from it. Just moments earlier, the brunch had been warm, noisy, ordinary, the kind of family gathering where overlapping voices and clinking glasses blurred into a background hum. And then my grandfather, with his trembling voice and watery smile, leaned across the table. "I'm glad you're enjoying the apartment I bought you." He said it with pride, the kind of pride that comes from thinking you've secured a legacy, that you've given your grandchild a foundation no one can shake. He thought he was celebrating me. I didn't even think. The words slid out of me like a knife, low and sharp. "I live in a basement." The laughter cut off. My cousin's glass froze just inches from her lips. The scrape of a chair leg on the tile, the shuffle of someone's napkin, even the hiss of the kettle in the kitchen, all of it seemed magnified in the sudden silence. My mother's eyes darted toward my father, pleading, warning, desperate. She knew. She'd always known. The room held its breath. I hadn't meant to humiliate him, not like that, not in front of everyone. But sometimes the truth doesn't wait for the right stage. It claws its way out, raw and undeniable, leaving wreckage in its wake. Growing up, I trusted him. He was the father who hoisted me onto his shoulders at parades, who made pinky promises I believed with my whole chest, who told me I would never go without. And when I started university, Grandpa had called me into his study. His hand shook as he pressed the envelope into mine, his voice brimming with pride. "It's yours," he said. "An apartment of your own. Stability. A future." I never saw it. Not once. Dad told me the paperwork was complicated. Told me he'd handle it for me. Told me to just focus on my studies, not worry my head with adult matters. And I believed him. For years, I believed him. Meanwhile, I lived in a basement, a damp box with mildew seeping through cracked walls, pipes groaning above my bed, and rats scratching through the silence at night. I worked shifts between classes just to cover bills, dragging myself through lectures with aching hands and sleepless eyes. Every time I asked about the apartment, he had a new excuse. Renovations, taxes, legal delays. I swallowed every lie like bitter medicine because he was my father. Because I wanted to believe he was protecting me, not stealing from me. And now, in that sunlit dining room, with the smell of bacon and fresh bread still hanging in the air, the truth bared its teeth. And each time I asked, Dad brushed me off with another excuse. He was always so smooth about it, too, like he was doing me a favor, shielding me from some complex adult responsibility. But the cracks showed. First came the new car. Shiny, spotless, a model far beyond what he'd ever claimed we could afford. Then the vacations, smiling photos of him and Mom sipping cocktails on white sand beaches, posted online as if to taunt me, while I dragged myself through graveyard shifts and mildew-soaked walls. And then my sister, the golden child, who suddenly started dropping hints about her investment property. I didn't need a confession. The truth assembled itself like shards of broken glass. He'd stolen it, my apartment, my inheritance, my stability. He thought I was too naive, too loyal, too much of a child to notice. He was wrong. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I planned. I spent weeks digging, nights hunched over my laptop, piecing together the trail. Property records, bank transfers, screenshots of texts where he dismissed me with a wave of his hand. The apartment deed stamped neatly with his name, not mine. Every lie cataloged, every betrayal documented. Step 1 was knowledge. Step 2 was timing. My birthday brunch gave me both. So when Grandpa asked that question, when his frail smile carried all the pride of a man who thought he had secured my future, I let the truth slip. I live in a basement. The silence wasn't awkward. It was surgical. The scalpel slicing open years of deceit. Grandpa's smile collapsed. His hand trembled as he set down his coffee cup. "What do you mean, basement?" he asked softly, almost afraid of the answer. I looked him dead in the eye. I never got the apartment. I've been living in a rented basement since college. The air thickened. All eyes turned to my father. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, stammering, sweat shining on his forehead. I let the moment stretch, tightening around him like a noose. Then I reached for the envelope I had tucked inside my bag. I brought it in case the opportunity arose. The proof. I slid it onto the table. Grandpa's wrinkled hands fumbled with the papers, the deed, the bank transfers, the messages. His lips pressed into a thin, shaking line. And then his voice broke, sharp and final as a gavel. "You stole from your own child." The words cracked through the room. My mother gasped, covering her mouth. My sister's face went pale. My father muttered excuses about protecting assets, about family investments, about planning for the future. But the words rang hollow against the weight of evidence. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. The documents spoke louder than his lies. The brunch dissolved into chaos. Accusations flying, tears spilling, voices rising. My father's protests grew louder, more desperate, as if volume could rewrite reality. But I sat still, calm, watching, because I knew what no one else in that room did. The real blow had already landed. 3 days earlier, I'd filed paperwork transferring the apartment into my name. Grandpa's original purchase gave me leverage, and once my lawyer saw the fraud, he moved fast. By the time my father scrambled to defend himself, the apartment was already gone from his grip. The final act came quietly. A week later, movers carried my few belongings out of the damp basement and into the apartment that had always been meant for me. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, hardwood floors gleamed beneath my feet, and for the first time in years, I exhaled. Meanwhile, my father sat in the ruins of his own making, Grandpa's wrath, my mother's muffled sobs behind closed doors, my sister's cold refusal to speak to him. The man who once promised I'd never go without now stood stripped of authority, exposed in front of everyone he thought would never doubt him. And me? I lived in peace. Sometimes I wonder if he lies awake at night, haunted by the moment his fork hit the plate, when the truth he buried finally clawed its way to the surface. But that's not my burden anymore. Betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from blood. But justice? Justice tastes sweeter when carved from their arrogance. I don't need his apologies. I don't need his approval. I have the apartment. I have the proof. And every time I unlock that door, I remember the look on his face when silence exposed him. That silence was my birthday gift.